Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
It's the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode number 216. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast University of Minnesota Athletic Director Mark Coyle. He's been a visitor this time of year on the show every year. Mark Coyle's wrapped up now his 5th year as a member of the NCAA Men's Basketball Committee. We'll talk about that experience in depth and how rewarding it's been. And now that his 5-year stint is over, how happy he is. We'll chat women's Sweet 16, men's basketball, men's and women's hockey, and much more with Gopher AD Mark Coyle. Our Go Gopher podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no-cost, no-obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Longtime Gopher sports supporter Cub is a proud sponsor of the Go Gopher podcast with Mike Grimm. In a hurry, don't worry, Cub delivers. Get fresh meat, produce, everyday essentials, and more delivered to your door. Cub is the official grocer of the Golden Gophers and proud to support Gopher athletics for over 20 years. Shop happy. The Go Gopher podcast is presented by onX Maps. Find out how to download the onX Fish app for free by listening to the Go Gopher podcast. We're podcasting episode 216 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe or follow the podcast. It's free to do so. You can also go back and listen to previous Go Gopher podcast. Last week, for example, we had new Gopher men's hockey coach Brett Larson on the show. He was fantastic. It's still timely, and if you missed it, go back and have a listen. This week, we're talking Gopher athletics in general with the man in charge. Athletic Director Mark Coyle will join me after this.
Hey Gopher fans, Jalen Crocker-Johnson here from Minnesota Men's Basketball. In basketball, wins come from preparation, trust, and executing when it matters the most. That's how True North Mergers and Acquisitions approaches selling your businesses. True North M&A is a local alumni-owned company and a proud sponsor of Gopher Athletics, helping businesses of all sizes make winning moves. Thinking about selling? True North's M&A helps maximize your life's work and close strong in crunch time. Visit tnma.com for confidential conversation.
This is Jim Suhan for TSR Injury Law, 612-TSR-TIME. TSR Injury Law started off as a small business. They are now a large, very successful business because they help people, because they win cases. If you are injured, call 612-TSR-TIME. They will help you out or point you in the right direction. They will not charge you unless they win your case, and they win a lot of cases. We don't want you to need their help. They don't want you to need their help. But if you do need their help, call 612-TSR-TIME.
It's episode 216, and we are talking with Athletic Director Mark Coyle. He joins us a few times a year. This is an annual occurrence here in April after you finish your tour of duty, your annual tour of duty with the NCAA Men's Basketball Selection Committee. That is over, and not only is it over for this year, but for you, it's now your 5-year tenure. You're retiring from that part of your work, huh?
Yeah, it's an awesome experience. I've had a chance to talk about over the past few years. It's an awesome experience. There's 12 people. I'm the Big Ten representative. It's a 5-year appointment, and have developed really, really cool relationships. I've had a chance to meet a lot of different people. I've had a chance to watch a lot of basketball across the country. Really grateful for it, but I'm really excited to be done. And I've not been able to go to as you know, the men's Big Ten basketball tournament for the last 5 years because that's when selection week is. I was able to do the women's Big Ten basketball tournament, but now I'll be able to do the women's and the men's Big Ten basketball tournament. So excited to be able to rejoin the Gopher team for postseason.
Yeah, it does take you out of commission a little bit at a pretty busy time. I mean, even during some of that, right, you were having coaching changes, including this year. So how did that time management when you're not here in Minneapolis and you're making some pretty big decisions about the future of your department?
Yeah, well, as you know, Mike, we've got such really, really good people in our department. And if you think about, 3 years ago, we hired Coach Plitzwhite, my second year on the basketball committee. And I remember being in Indianapolis for selection week and watching a lot of West Virginia women's basketball games. And people were trying to figure out why I was watching that, but I didn't share with them why I was. And then a year ago, obviously, we hired Nico, and we went through that process with Nico. And I had a chance, it gave me a great advantage because when I go to Indianapolis, we are literally in lockdown mode. I mean, I'm watching college basketball games. I'm selecting teams with the other 11 people on the committee. We have time where I can actually interview, talk with coaches and so forth. And of course, this year, when we had the two changes with our hockey programs, I was able to, it was a little bit later, it was past selection week this year. It was during the first and second round when I was in St. Louis. And I'm able to watch some good basketball games, but I also have downtime. We have days where the teams are practicing, where I can actually interview coaches at the arena, which worked out really well for me. So we've been able to do it all, but would not be able to do it without the great people back here on my staff. The people I work with every day were so helpful, and we'd like to be prepared. We were prepared, and we feel like we made some really good choices.
Yeah, it did not take long once the process started to get the people in place, that's for sure. There's always, I mean, not always, but for the most part, there's always been phones. But how has virtual meetings where you can kind of have a face-to-face meeting, whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever your preference is, has that changed things? Is that how you're doing meetings kind of that way now?
Yeah, I'm the first person to say nothing good came from what we went through in the pandemic. I still can't believe we all went through that. It's hard to believe. I was with you.
Yeah.
In fact, you and I were doing a podcast, I think,
yes.
when the world shut down that long, 6 years ago, I guess, is when it was. But one of the bright things, I think, was obviously the virtual meetings, and you can talk to people. And I can tell you, like, for example, when I was in St. Louis, my site for the men's basketball tournament, the first and second round games were on a Friday, Sunday. And so Thursday, I'm at the arena all day. I'm watching teams practice. I'm not watching teams practice. I'm in a committee room talking to people, doing Zooms with people. I'm at the games all day. There's 4 games on Friday. I'm at those games on Friday. We had about a 2.5-hour break between session 1 and session 2 that allowed me to do virtual interviews in the committee room. And then on Saturday, I was able to get a ton of work done because I had to be there all day for closed practices for the 4 teams that advanced to the second round. So I could sit in that room and I interviewed people all day virtually, which was awesome. So you get to know people, you get to spend time with them. While that's going on, our search committee back here in the Twin Cities is having conversations with them. I could then visit with the search committee. We could kind of get a feel of who we liked, who we didn't like, start to narrow down to have those final conversations and final interviews.
And when you're doing these Zooms, is it all with coaches, or are you also reaching out to people who might know coaches you might hire and say, tell me about this person and what can you do there too?
Yeah, well, with the people who give me names and help me out with names, those are always usually phone calls.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I've had a chance to meet and visit with people who I would never meet or visit with, who I've been able to just, again, cross paths with. And, I'm always amazed. You've heard me talk about this before, whether you're doing a football search, a basketball search, a baseball search, a softball search, whatever it is, you're amazed at the names that come forward and the names of the people who reach out to you, expressing interest or recommending somebody that you need to talk to. And again, that was always very helpful when we had those conversations, but those were a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
And as you know, I try to be prepared. We keep a list of coaches all the time. And a lot of times those names are already on our list, but if they're not, we add them to the list. We do some research back here to make sure we have a good feel of who we're talking to make sure we make the best choice for our student athletes.
So that is all part of what happens in February. It starts right, like that. Really, you get nitty gritty starting in February. I know you're going into Indy sometimes, and then when you have these auxiliary things that happen. In fact, I remember on our podcast, you were in Portland on a Zoom. We recorded a podcast. Remember the lights went out?
I do remember that was my first year.
The motion detector said there's nobody in the room, and all of a sudden the screen goes blank. I'm like, oh, did we lose? And you're like, I'm here, but the lights went out.
Yeah, that was my first year on the committee. God, that feels like an eternity ago. That was my first year out in Portland. And yeah, no, you're exactly right. With the basketball committee, what we would do, the NCAA highly recommends that you put together a team of people that can help you back here. So I worked with Paul Rovnak, Mike Wiersbicki, Jenny Yalen, Ryan Livingston. We worked together, and we would start to meet in early January. We'd start to map out teams. We put together a Minnesota top 30. We would then add the next 20 to 25 teams that we felt like we should pay attention to. And then as we kind of worked our way towards the mock selection, you get a better feel of who you're paying attention to. And then, of course, for selection weekend, it all kind of goes from there. So it was a big-time commitment. And, again, it was an awesome experience, but really grateful to be back with the Gophers at the Big Ten tournament.
So grateful you had a little party, right? You had to party.
Yeah, well, we invited people over to our house the other day just to kind of celebrate and to thank our staff. I was not prepared for how much time I would be gone. That was the part that caught me off guard. And people who were on the committee before me talked to me. Jim Phillips, who was the athletic director at Northwestern, who's now the commissioner of the ACC. Jim was on the committee before me, and he kind of talked to me about, hey, the time commitment, what you have to do, those type of things. But until you go through it a year, you have no idea what you're getting into. And then when you actually go through the process, I think I did 6 out of 7 weeks on the road this year, and that was the same way the past 4 years. So we're grateful to be done. But we did have a little bit get together at our house the other day to celebrate and to thank our staff for their great work.
Pretty cool, no doubt. Now, I think most people consider the main job of the committee to pick the 68 teams in the field, and maybe that is. I'm asking, but there are other duties that you serve in regard to just general men's college basketball issues over the course of a season. To kind of take us through, is the field of 68 the number one thing, or what other things are you guys doing?
Well, obviously that's a huge priority, and people pay attention to the basketball committee. When you're around March Madness and that time. But we have a women's basketball committee that the men's committee works very, very closely with the women's basketball committee, and you feel a great responsibility because March Madness for the NCAA, that generates over 95% of their revenue for the year. It's a big deal, right? And so you feel a great sense of responsibility when you work with the women's committee, the men's committee, to make sure you're good stewards of the tournament. You do have to make decisions, whether it be about officiating, about media contracts. Obviously, the NCAA negotiates those deals, but you're trying to work with the TV partners to make sure you maximize the value of the media exposure for the student athletes, the programs, and those type of things. We've talked about tournament expansion. You've seen a lot in the news about that. And is the tournament going to expand? Is it not going to expand? What does that look like for the women's tournament? What does that look like for the men's tournament? So there are a ton of things that you focus on, but obviously everything kind of narrows down to that selection weekend in early March when you actually set the fields and you get to Selection Sunday.
Are you now, having been a veteran of 5 years, is the process pretty flawless? Or now that you know, would you offer feedback, or will you offer feedback? Hey, I think we could improve it if we did this, or do you think it's the way it's set pretty good right now?
Mike, that's an awesome question. I can't tell you how much respect Danny Gavitt. Danny would do this podcast with you in 2 seconds. He'd be a great guest, by the way. But Danny Gavitt, who I work closely with, who oversees men's basketball in the committee, he is phenomenal person. Dave Warlock, who does all their PR, media relations. Joanne Scott, who's Danny's right-hand person. LJ Wright, Danny Hayner. I could name about 20 NCAA people who I work with. And their involvement in how they work with the committees is just phenomenal. So they're a big part of it. And again, there's a lot of moving pieces to move the thing forward, and they do a great job and give you great guidance.
Yeah, so you think the process is pretty good how it's handled now?
I think the process, what they have built and what they put in place, they have so many policies and procedures in place, and they literally think of every possible scenario and how do you work your way through that, because the last thing you want to do is to put a team or a student athlete at a disadvantage when they're working their way. Such a dream to get to the men's or women's basketball tournament. You want to make sure it's first class, and so they focus very hard on the student athlete experience. But again, they put everything in place to make sure there's no surprises, with the exception of the horn going off at Houston for 8 minutes. That did catch people off guard.
That was a tough one for sure. How hard does it get? Take us, if you can, a little bit. I know there is some cloak and dagger to it because you don't want a lot of info to get out. But how hard is it to get those final 2 or 3 teams? Because I suppose like the first 25, right? Anybody that follows the game is going to say we can post those. Seeding, I'm sure, is part of it too. But that last maybe 3 or 4 spots comes down to what, 8 or 9 teams? How much time is spent on that, and how hard is that? And I know that you probably have colleagues who might be disappointed that their team's not in, and colleagues who are like, thank you for putting us in on those last few slots. spots.
Yeah, Mike, you're 100% correct. I feel, and I remember my first year on the committee to now my fifth year on the committee, 1 through 25, we all have a good feel. If you pay attention to college basketball, you can figure out 1 to 25. If you think about it, there's 37 at-large spots. There's 31 AQs. So you have those, what the AQs, it's like whoever wins the Big Ten wins the AQ, the regular, or the Big Ten tournament, they get the AQ, right? And so sometimes you have pickups where you pick up an at-large spot. So let's say you have anywhere between 37 to 41 opportunities for at-large teams to get in the NCAA tournament. When you get down to those final 8 or 9 teams, we talk about that they all have scars on their resume. You hear a lot about quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4. You want to be super clean in quad 3, quad 4. You want to be as clean as possible in quad 2, and in quad 1, if you're competitive there, you're going to be in the NCAA tournament. So, but by the time you get to those final 8, 9, 10 teams, they all have scars. It is razor thin. I don't think I ever stood the term razor thin until I was on this committee because you're looking at 2 team sheets with teams with very identical resumes. One can be from an A4 conference, one can be from a mid-major. You're trying to understand the strength of schedule. What does it look like? Who did you play? Where did you play? How did you do? All these factors come in. But we literally have, so many metrics we look at across the board on each team. And then at the end of the day, you've got to make really hard choices. And again, 12 of you vote. Not all 12 are going to agree. And you've got to work your way through that process. The conversations are really healthy. We do have conversations. If they're talking about Minnesota, I have to leave the room. But if they're not talking about the Gophers, I can be in the room. And you do have disagreement. You have committee members who feel very passionately about this team or that team, and this is why they feel passionately about that team. And you'll have others who may disagree with them completely and say, you're a bozo. We don't call anybody bozos, but you need to be looking at these teams, right, and that type of stuff. So it's all very respectful. And again, when I mentioned the names of the NCAA, they have so many policies and procedures in place that when you get down to those final bubble teams, because you feel, those are big decisions, and they always come Saturday night, Sunday, right? When it's go time and you're tired because you've been selecting teams for 5 days now. But everybody takes that role very, very seriously. And again, really good conversations. But it is hard. But again, those last 8, 9, 10 teams, it's really hard to get them in the field.
And you're the Big Ten, quote, representative. But does that necessarily mean you're trying to be an advocate of the Big Ten, or is it more this is just a big league that needs someone here? Like I'm just for the fun of it. Well, this year, Indiana is one of the first handful out. My guess is you have to kind of go by what you see on your sheet. You can't, just because you're from the Big Ten, say, pound the table and say the Hoosiers got to be in.
Yeah, you're allowed to give facts, not your opinions.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when I'm the Big Ten representative, I'm the Big Ten has a person on the committee at all times. So I was the Big Ten representative. I was actually assigned to the Big 12 conference. I had the WAC. I had the Northeast Conference. I was secondary on the ACC Conference, so I watched a lot of Big 12 and ACC basketball this year to follow those teams, so I had a good feel of them. Obviously, I have a good feel of the Big 10 because I see them every night, watching the games and watching the Gophers and listening to you and so forth. And so I can advocate for the Big 10, but again, it's got to be factual. So I can say, Minnesota played Indiana twice. We split with them. We beat them at home at their place. They got us pretty good. But if you look at Indiana, it's scary that I know this. I think they lost 7 of their last 8 games. Their 1-1 was against the Gophers. And again, those are stats I can repeat out to the committee and talk about them when we talk about them. So we do pay attention to all those things.
And maybe you can't say, but are there times, and it may not even be you, maybe it's other people on the committee where could you be getting texts from coaches or other ADs from other schools saying, "Hey, come on, brother, we need a favor here"? Or does everybody kind of know that's off the?
Yeah, I think everybody's very respectful. You will most definitely. Again, I was assigned to the Big 12, the ACC, the WAC, the Northeast Conference, et cetera, and we ask our they're called our conference monitoring contacts, our reports we report up to. I ask them to send me information during selection week. So let's say there's a key injury in a Big 12 game, or there's a key injury in an ACC game, or whatever it may be. We can get those updates, but people are very respectful. They don't text you and say, "Oh my gosh, you got to get this team in or else
I'm going to stalk your family."
There's nothing like that. No, people are very respectful. But we always tell people, the more information you get, the more it just helps you to make decisions. Because again, you're looking at a lot of data, you're looking at a lot of analytical information, and again, you're just trying to make the right decision. Because our job is to put in the best 37 at-large teams.
And probably at the end of the day, there is no right
right, like 100% answer. I think people would look and say, you guys put Texas in and they make a nice run, so hey, good call. But there's also no guarantee, had you put Indiana in, that Indiana wouldn't have made a run, because they have a good coach and a good player, and they've beaten some quality teams. So sometimes there's no right answer, but it's merit-based, right, at the end of the day.
It's merit-based. Again, I go back to, I remember when I was assigned to the committee, I remember one of my very first meetings with Dan Gavitt and Joanne Scott, who again kind of run the tournament, and they just said, it's your job to pick the best teams, not the most deserving, but the best teams, and also who did you play, where did you play, and how did you do? At the end of the day, you got to win the games, and it's really simple. You got to win your games.
You think about the event, and a friend and I were just talking about this, how it's just set up beautifully. It's a 3-week or so stretch. The first weekend is opening weekend. That's as fun as anything. And then now you're getting into Sweet 16 bursts, and now you're getting into Final Four bursts, and then it ultimately ends up. Part of it is because 64 teams kind of fits that mode. You had mentioned revenue reasons and other reasons that it looks like there's potential that this thing could go to 76. I think the rumblings are, if you follow social media and people who have sources or what have you, and I'm sure you have a better idea and share what you can, maybe there's some info that's guarded. Do you think it'll be 76 next year? And take us through the people who are like losing their minds, like how could you ruin such a great thing?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, again, probably over the last 2 years, we as a basketball committee, the men's and women's committee, have had lots of conversations about expansion, what that looks like. Again, I know Dan Gavitt with the NCAA, President Baker, Charlie Baker of the NCAA, have obviously been having conversations with the media partners. What does it look like? How can it happen? Is it the best thing for college basketball? No decisions have been made that I'm aware of. If something breaks when this comes out, I did not know about it. I'm telling you the truth, but no decision. So I think we have summer meetings coming up, Mike, in July, so I'm sure this will be a topic in our summer meetings. Obviously, I think there is a sense of urgency because these things just don't happen overnight. And what I mean by that is the planning. And again, the NCAA, what has been one of the pleasant surprises of being on this committee is just how hard the NCAA works and focuses on this event for the men's and women's basketball tournaments and the care they have for the student-athlete experience. I mean, at the end of the day, they want to make sure when our women's team went to the Sweet 16, when we hosted the first and second round, and what a great atmosphere that was when we went to the Sweet 16, the NCAA truly cares about providing a great experience for our student athletes. And I think if you talk to Coach Plitzwhite and our student athletes, they would tell you they had a great time. They want to do that for everybody. So if you expand the tournament, just think about all the logistics and the work that goes behind that for these additional teams to make sure they have a great experience. And does it feel like it's an NCAA experience when we do expand the team? So those are conversations that will continue to take place. Those are decisions that will be made. I'm not sure I'll be part of the committee, to be honest with you. My term expires officially, I think, at the end of August. So if a decision is made by then, you can send me emails saying great job or bad job. I don't know yet, but again, those are conversations that will continue to take place. But there's no doubt they're having lots of conversations about what would it look like? Can you pull it off? And if you think about it, Mike, there's a window. You talked about that 3-week window. What I do know is that by Thursday at noon Eastern time, you have to have a bracket at 64 teams. Yeah. So whether it's 68, you have the first 4, right? Or if it goes to 76 or whatever that number is, by Thursday at noon Eastern, you've got to be at 64 teams because it's got to finish on Monday night because, again, the NCAA's big TV partner has what golf event on the Masters, right? So they've got a 3-week window they've got to fit it in. So there's a lot of logistics they've got to work through.
Yeah, and I'm a traditionalist generally, but I'm not losing my mind if it goes to 70. So just personally, not that anyone cares what I think, but I think if you really think about it, it adds 8 games. And I've enjoyed the play-in Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so this is my argument always, too, when people say, there's too many bowl games. Why are those bowl games? And I'm like, well, 1, if you don't like it, don't watch. But 2, why are we complaining about getting to watch more football? Yeah. And I would argue the similar thing, like would anybody have been just, if you don't want to watch, it's fine, but you add a couple of teams and it's all-day basketball. I would assume the format would be all-day basketball now, Tuesday and Wednesday in the play-ins. You probably couldn't do them all in Dayton. Yeah. Maybe they go to the sites. Because I do think those are exciting, and I think Dayton, you would agree, does a great job. But if there is a weakness to it, those teams that lose feel like they probably weren't really in the dance itself. Where if you go to 76 and maybe those play-in games are at sites, like Minneapolis next year is going to host at Target, maybe that becomes, okay, well, there's going to be 4 more games on Tuesday. Beautiful. those teams that lose that opening now feel like maybe they're in?
Yeah, they have an opportunity. And I think, too, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about bowl games and postseason. Like, you talk to any one of our football players when they play in a bowl game, they're pretty excited, aren't they? Yeah. And kids dream about being in the NCAA basketball tournament. So like you, I tend to be very traditional in terms of how we do things. I'm very open to expanding the term because I do think you give 8 new teams an opportunity. You give student athletes an opportunity. And you hit, again, the key is, how does it feel like an NCAA championship, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to give those kids that experience. So if you do add it, and I think the NCAA is being very wise, they want to make sure they understand what does that look like? Can we provide that same experience? I can tell you when I was the athletic director at Boise State, our basketball team on the men's side played in the first 4 twice in Dayton. It was awesome. Yeah. The arena sold out. It's a great atmosphere. It's a great environment. Our kids at Boise State would tell you they felt like they played in the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
So can you replicate that if you do add the teams and what that looks like? But
right.
You're exactly right. I think the more teams, it just gives people more of an opportunity to be a part of it. And again, the upsets, all those, it's what makes March Madness.
And you add a couple more teams. Like you mentioned Boise, that's a good example. My fear is if they go to 76, and you probably have mixed feelings on this now at the Big Ten institution, it likely opens up the door for Indiana, for example, maybe West Virginia, Cincinnati, some of these bubble teams that barely missed. My hope would be that the committee wouldn't just fill it with Power Fives. I know TV might say, hey, we want that. But Boise, Belmont had a great year in the Missouri Valley. We're both grew up in Missouri Valley country. I think if we expand to 76, Belmont should get in now. Drake, your alma mater for a couple of years, they had some great years with Ben McCollum and the coach at Indiana now, Darren DeVries. Had they not won in St. Louis, they're probably not in a couple of those years. And I don't remember, maybe they didn't make it. I can't remember all those times. But I think if you expand that there's got to be a spot or two for Boise State, for Belmont, for Drake, for who, I'm forgetting Tulsa this year, right? Tulsa was right up in that thick. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree with everything you're saying. And again, I think that's where the committee, again, with the 12 members, those are the conversations we have. And I think those teams have a really, really good shot that you just named. And I think of Indiana State a few years ago. Remember, Indiana State had a great year. They got upset in the conference tournament. They did not make the NCAA tournament. They went to the NIT. I think, did they win the NIT that year? I can't remember if they won the NIT or lost.
Well, we that's how the Gopher season ended. Remember, it was Indiana State.
That's right.
Down in Terre Haute.
That's right, down there.
That was that year. And then that whole team shifted to St. Louis, and they had an unbelievable
They did really
season
well in the
this
A-10
year,
this year. They did a really good job on that side. So I think expansion, if it's done the right way, I think it's something that we need to continue to look at and make the right decisions on that side of it.
Mark Coyle, our guest, episode 216. It's time for us to talk a little OnX fishing. If you're heading out on the water here as the weather warms up and you want that best bite, use OnX Fish from OnX Maps. It's time to get out there. Everything you need to know is right there, and it's in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public or private land or ponds or streams or rivers, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports or fumbling through the internet. Fish new lakes like they're your home waters. OnX Fish gives you proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. You get 10 years of knowledge in about 10 minutes. Download OnX Fish on the App Store or visit onxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find the lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch. OnX Fish from OnX Maps.
Know what happy is? Veggies. Crunchy, crispy, colorful, seasonal, aromatic, juicy veggies. Produce at its freshest. Cub produce. Best produce, period. Guaranteed to make you happy or will replace it. No questions asked. Because good produce makes veggie lovers happy. Just remember, fresh, happy. Stale, limp, and wilted, not happy. You want to make a veggie lover happy? Shop Cub for produce. And shop happy.
Hey Gopher fans, Bobby Durkin here from Minnesota men's basketball. In our program, championship culture is built on toughness, trust, and showing up every day to do the work. That's why I'm proud to support the True North family of companies. True North invests in elite teams, like the championship team at True North Mergers and Acquisitions, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and their family of independently owned companies, visit thetruenorthfamily.com. That's how champions are built.
Gopher men, let's start there. Nico Medved, year one. A year ago at this time, he was just getting the ball rolling. How do you grade year one for Nico Medved?
Well, first off, and you spend as much time with him as I do. What a great dude.
Yeah.
I hope people understand. We have a really compassionate, caring individual who knows how to coach and can lead our program the right way. I'm just very pleased with what he did. If you think about what he and Erica and their two girls had to do, I mean, they literally lose out in Seattle. Within 24 hours, he's named head coach here. He had to build an entire roster. He did all that, and the wins that we had this year, I don't think anybody expected to do what we did this year, and I give him lots of credit. And again, the dude can flat out X and O with anybody.
Yeah.
So really, really excited about him and what he's done with our program. The retention of our student athletes has been phenomenal. That means you're doing things the right way because anybody can go in the portal at any moment. Our kids did not do that on the men's basketball team. So again, just really grateful for him, and I think we have bright days ahead of us with Minnesota men's basketball.
Yeah, and we're recording, we should mention, on Monday afternoon. Someone might be listening to this on Wednesday, and the roster, who knows, right? We're in that time of year where 4 or 5 names could pop before you know it. So as we're discussing, the roster retention was good. The core four guys back, and I'm hoping now I know that coaches have been working hard. Women's similar, right? In terms of their roster will have a little different look, as all teams will. They're retaining players and coming off of a Sweet 16. This has to be an exciting time, and get those season tickets now, right?
100%. When we hired Dawn, it's. I feel like each hire you go through, you try to make more and more wise decisions. And when you looked at Dawn and what she did at every stop in her career, then when she went to South Dakota, and then, of course, when she goes to West Virginia, when she comes here, you just saw it being built the right way. And the Sweet 16 appearance, I remember I'm watching that game courtside in St. Louis going bonkers when Amaya hit the shot. I felt like I could hear the barn rocking all the way down in St. Louis, and the people who were talking about what a great atmosphere it was, those type of things. And we've got our core players back. I know that her and her staff are working incredibly hard right now in the transfer portal. They're having great success there. And again, Dawn has met every expectation. And like Nico, just a great person who knows how to coach and can coach at a high level. And you've heard me talk about this. She might be the most intentional person I've ever been around. Like, everything she does is for a reason. If she uses a pencil one day, there's a reason why she's using a pencil. And I really admire that and respect that about her. But again, cares great about her players. And it shows about the culture she's created when we're able to retain that top talent, because every one of those kids could jump in the portal and they haven't. They've stayed here, which is awesome.
She reminds me a little of PJ that way, and that PJ does nothing by accident, right? I mean, everything, there's a purpose to it.
Yep.
Sometimes you and I might look at each other and say, what's he up to here? And then you realize, well, he's got a purpose, and then you see it. Yep. Nico is a little that way too. Nico, I have kind of described, he kind of is the aw shucks guy, and he'll give you the I think we'll be okay. And then you watch his team in practice and you watch him coach, and you're like, yeah, they're going to be just like, okay, Nico.
I had a chance to watch a lot of his Colorado State basketball games a year ago, his last year there, because I did a lot with the Mountain West Conference. And so I could watch them, and, they started out really slow out there.
Yeah.
And maybe week or two after Thanksgiving, I'm not sure they thought they were going to do anything last year. And then they make the run they made. Maryland hits that shot to prevent them from going to the Sweet 16. The dude can coach. And you're right. He does have that, we'll figure it out. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you come out and you beat Michigan State at home. I mean, he does. He's very well prepared. And, again, he's got a great staff, and just really grateful for him.
Yeah. Big Ten won in football, the national title in women's basketball, and national title in women's hoops as well, women's and men's, if I didn't say that right, women's and men's. Obviously a big league. Minnesota's a part of that league. So in your mind, what do the Gophers have to do? You mentioned Michigan for men, Michigan State win, Indiana win, Iowa win. Iowa's in the Elite Eight. Played Michigan as tough as anyone in that building this year, only lost by 10. And there's Arizona would like to have lost by 10, right, in that Final Four. So my point is, the gap is not an ocean, but there is a gap. So what, in your mind, as you oversee all this, in the right now, the premier conference in the country, what's for the Minnesota Golden Gopher vision for you?
Well, every opportunity is in front of us, and what I mean by that is there is no doubt the Big Ten is the most competitive conference, top to bottom. I mean, it is every night you've got to pull your socks up and compete. And what I like about it is, is, we are not going to make excuses. If you remember when I was hired, I talked to Coach Alvarez. He's like, quit making excuses and just compete. And we have it in front of us. And there's no doubt, I remind our coaches all the time, other people aren't slowing down.
Right.
We've got to pick up the pace, and we've got to go, and we've got to operate with a sense of urgency. And again, I think we have opportunities in front of us. Women's basketball program finished 4th in the league this year. We battled UCLA closer than a lot of people did. If you take a step back, and I can tell you when I had to watch Michigan's last 4 men's basketball games because I was assigned to them at the Midwest Regional, and then I had them at the Final Four. And with all due respect to Michigan, I don't want to see another Michigan men's basketball game. I want to see the Gophers playing there, right? But the entire time I'm like, how well did we play in Ann Arbor?
Yeah.
We battled our kids, and we had 6 kids, right? There is a gap, but it's not like it was. We're closing that gap. And again, I feel like we have the right coaches in place. In those key programs that will give us a chance to compete at the highest level. But that's our expectation. We want to compete with those dudes. We want to, again, make some noise, and that's why I'm so excited for Dawn and what she did this past year. But again, we have high expectations, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to compete at a high level.
We haven't talked, and we won't because we're about out of time here, but and I think every time I have you on, I say, we'll do a podcast sometime just on revenue share, name, image, and likeness. We've hit on it on occasion, whether it's with Guardsy at halftime or, you've talked about it. But just to close, in that situation with the Big Ten, the good news is there's a lot of money coming in through TV and other revenue sources, radio and whatever else it is. And the flip side of that is you're playing somebody every night that also has a big war chest of money, whether it's Michigan or, down through Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Wisconsin, your rivals, Iowa. So NIL revenue share, how does that – just give me the Cliff Notes version here as we wrap up, because I don't want – we'd wear people out if we went a whole hour. Someday let's do that.
Yeah.
But just for now, for Minnesota to take that, to close it more, to be in the tournament for men, to be a college football playoff contender, where are we with that, and how's your vision for that?
Yeah, well, first off, we are in the most powerful conference resource-wise. There's a reason why the Big Ten's winning everything.
Yeah.
We've got great resources. I think that the challenge for Minnesota and the opportunity for Minnesota is that how do we maximize the revenue share dollars we have? How do we maximize the external NIL dollars we have to give ourselves a chance to compete? And again, we are not far off. 3-4 years ago, the gap was much different. Now we're in the ballpark with these people. We can compete with these people, and it's just getting the right type of kids that can come to our program, can compete academically, can compete athletically, can compete socially on our campus. And again, I feel like we've got the right coaches. In my 10 years here, I feel like we've got the best coaches we've ever had in my tenure. That's not disrespectful to any other coaches that we work with, but I feel like we have a good core group of people. And for us to take the next step competitively is how do we make data-driven decisions with the resources we have. There's supposed to be a cap. I'm not sure there is a cap right now. We need rules. That's not taking a shot at anybody, but at Minnesota, we will do it the right way. We will follow the guidelines that we're supposed to follow. I'm not sure everybody is doing that, but we will do it the right way. But again, we will compete at a high level. That is our expectation, and our coaches understand that.
All right, very good. I know you've got other commitments here today. Always, this is always one of my favorite ones of the year. Whenever you're on, it's the favorite one. But to get some insight on taking us behind the screen, so to speak, of the committee, and I know you're like you mentioned, it's a little bittersweet. You enjoyed it, rewarding experience, busy. Glad to be done.
Yeah, it'll be great to be. You can take me out to dinner at the Indianapolis at the Big Ten men's basketball tournament next year.
I look forward to it.
Hey, but before I get out of here, we don't say this enough. I hope you know how much we appreciate you, Mike, and what you do for our program. Obviously, our fans, everybody knows who you are, the voice of the Gophers, but you do so much to promote our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff. I just hope you know how much we appreciate you and respect you. And I feel like every month you're getting named Sportscaster of the Year in the state of Minnesota. I know you won it again this year, but that's well-deserved, and we're very proud to work with you, and we're very grateful for everything you do for our student athletes.
I'm privileged to be here. It's an awesome place to be. There's no question about it. A lot of good people, and as you and I are roughly the same age. By the way, Waterloo Columbus baseball team's playing at Target Field in June.
I'm going to have to check it out.
I think you got to be the honorary first pitch guy. They play Grundy Center. Only you and I might know who Grundy Center and Waterloo Columbus are. But we're roughly the same age, and being around young people with energy. it keeps us young, right?
Oh, it's. I always tell people, if you're having a bad day, come over and eat in our nutrition center at Athletes Village. You can spend time with our student athletes. They are such good young adults who have good hearts, who are trying to represent this institution the right way, and they're very appreciative of the support they get. But I love being around, and I love being around people who want to compete.
Yeah.
Right? I'm competitive. I want to compete at a high level, and we're around people who do that every day. So it does keep you young.
Well, thank you for coming on, as always.
Appreciate you, boss.
All right, he is Mark Coyle. It's episode 216.
My thanks to Golden Gopher Athletic Director Mark Coyle for being my guest on this week's Go Gopher podcast. So many things to chat with Mark about, and I hope you enjoyed hearing his perspective on all of those as much as I did. Always appreciate him taking the time out of his busy schedule to share some thoughts with you and with me. Episode 216 is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. Cub is a proud supporter of Gopher Athletics for over 20 years and proud sponsor of the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm. Cub, bigger savings on the items you love. Shop happy. OnX Fish also sponsors the show. Happy fishing from OnX Maps. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please right now click that subscribe or follow button to the Go Gopher Podcast. It's free to follow, free to subscribe, and free to listen at any time. And please share the link to the podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. And if you love the show, please let us know with some positive feedback on your social media channels. We'll talk again next week.
Know what the happiest bird is? Chicken. Cub fried chicken. Wait, let me rephrase that. Know what bird makes people happiest? Cub fried chicken. Crispy, crunchy, juicy, perfectly seasoned. It's the kind of chicken that disappears faster than you can say, 8-piece, please. Or, let's be real, maybe 12-piece. Because when it comes to fried chicken, more just means more happy. So if you're shopping chicken, shop Cub fried chicken and shop happy.